Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature video number 151. 3 links are in the description here. One for this title, which is Football Occultism, something that I teased out last year, actually didn't get around to until now. I had other work that I had to do, and then I had the CreateSpace rigmarole to go through. Second and third links are to my books blogs, both on Blogspot and WordPress, whichever one you prefer to use. I've got a great many other titles now available, including some that had been suppressed and then got okayed. This work is 30 pages long, so it's not particularly lengthy. The basic point, the basic goal was this. Other works have mentioned superstition as they relate to football and other sports. You know, sports curses, like, oh, our team didn't win, a certain game for 80 years. We were cursed, then we did some ritual, and now we won it, and everything's great. People have done that before, and people have talked about some of the symbolism. I wanted, though, to go into 2 specific sections here, which I covered in some degree of detail. The first is what are the specific occult connotations of, like, the mascots, the names of the teams. In some cases, that doesn't exist. You have to go a little bit into their history, like I believe for the Green Bay Packers. And you have to sort of look, what do these symbols within authentic occult systems represent? Now, this doesn't have to be any specific single system. Some of it's Mesoamerican folklore, like totems, sort of the shamanism side. Some of it's more modern, even Victorian occultism in the more Western sense. Some of it comes from the Eastern world. A lot of nature references, a lot of animal references, things like that. I wanted to sort of, in brief, cover for each team what that sort of symbolism actually represented. Even when you have you have like the Cleveland Browns. What does the color brown represent then? You have to go into this material. And the second and more lengthy section was the initial subject of the work. I simply decided to look at symbology as well, and that's the synchronistic side. Is there a correlation between, especially within U.S. politics, but in the world at large in general, because the U.S. affects the world, is there a correlation, a synchronicity seemingly, between who has won the Super Bowl in specific, and in some teams have never even been to one, we have to keep that in mind. Is there a certain connection between that and the sort of type of events that dominated the year's history for that year? I say yes. Having looked at it for the teams that won multiple Super Bowls especially, there's overlap. Now, you have to use a subjective, admittedly, totally subjective measure of what constitutes significant, what kind of events you're interested in. But there are certain events that we look at. They are simply organically more significant. In general, they are considered to be within all human systems than others. Watergate, for example, comes up here. Some of the Cold War era sort of rhetoric. Nuclear testing. Economic downturns, economic surges, things, certainly politics dominates much of it, although not all. For instance, with the Oakland Raiders, I was surprised to learn they've been winners in 3 Super Bowls. Catastrophic events, or at least significantly negative events, have happened in all 3. You've got the explosion of Mount St. Helens, certainly a very significant modern disaster. You've got the beginning of the current Kilauea eruption, which we see long-lastingly has affected things in Hawaii. And then you have the son of Sam murderer, actually, Berkowitz. So I was surprised to see the number of connections here as far as what do people consider to be, artificially, admittedly, what do they anthropically consider significant? It appears that there is a correlation, yeah. You could say that. Of course, again, that's totally arbitrary. And for some teams, they've never won a Super Bowl. You do realize there are only a certain number that have happened. About half the teams have never won a Super Bowl, so they can't be counted within that specific system. And although you could say maybe their particular spiritual power just happens to be weaker. Maybe like the Patriots and the New York Giants and some of these other teams are just, simply they're ahead of the rest. So I decided to throw that in there, and it is mildly entertaining. Am I saying that there's actually a definitive synchronistic correlation there? Well, it could work in reverse. It could be that teams are impacted by external events causing them to under or outperform within a general year. That could be true, but it's still a correlation. So I thought it was something interesting. People had asked me for such a work, so I decided to write one. So again, link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon, the only one since I am the author. Not an edited work. I wrote this myself. Second and third links are to my books blogs. You can find other works that I've written, other works that I've edited. Not all of which, by the way, have anything to do with spirituality. There are some political works as well and some entertaining pieces. That's about all. Peace out.